Hello, everyone, and welcome to Communication in a Time of Social Distancing with Doctors Susan and Peter Glaser. As a longtime friend and colleague, I'm excited to be part of this webinar. The communication challenges of suddenly finding ourselves in constant, close contact with our families and housemates, and at the same time cut off from our offices and the activities we took for granted just 6 weeks ago, are enormous. Susan and Peter have spent their professional lives as academics and business consultants, researching and teaching best practices in solving the communication problems that organizations and individuals face. Their work has been published in over 40 scholarly articles and 3 books. The bestseller, Be Quiet, Be Heard, The Paradox of Persuasion. I first met them at the University of Oregon as a doctoral student when they were scholars researching the question, can we develop practical, testable tools that people can use to improve their relationships by improving their communication? The result, evidence-based skill models proven to build trust, solve problems, and resolve conflicts. Today, the Glasers work worldwide, improving communication in organizations both public and private, from tech startups to Microsoft, and from the government councils of New Zealand to the Congress of the United States. As partners in life as well as work, Susan and Peter bring special insights to these times. They'll show you how the communication tools for improving relationships at work can be used to improve the whole complex of relationships you're involved in right now, all under one roof.
Thank you, Carol. Lovely introduction. We are so pleased to have this opportunity to be with you at this extraordinary time in our country and world history.
Many of us have been socially isolating for almost 2 months. We know that some of you have been essential workers on the front lines the whole time. Some people are in communities now that are beginning to open up. The one thing that we all share in common at this moment is uncertainty about what the next chapter of COVID-19 will bring to our world. And when there's uncertainty, communication challenges abound and get more complicated. And that is why we developed this 2-part webinar. One of the things we know is that our office has become a repository for questions all around the world that people have about communication. And that is what we'll be answering over the next 2 sessions. So we would like to start by giving you an overview of what the first webinar will focus on, and then what the second one will. The first part of our webinar today focuses on your personal relationships. We really believe this is an opportunity for every one of us to say, how can I enhance the quality of my relationships with my significant other, with my family, with my friends, with my workmates? That is what today is about. Then in our second session, we will be focusing on the team dynamics and offering you very specific ways to use this moment in time to move your teams toward greater levels of cohesion, productivity, and engagement.
So today, our goal is to really focus on 5 micro communication behaviors that are very counterintuitive, but they're micro communication behaviors that can really allow us, even in the heat of a difficult conflict, to solve a problem, strengthen a relationship, and even deepen trust.
But before we begin, we would love to get a sense for where you are all right now, where you're coming from. So would you use the chat box to just let us know where you're coming from at this moment in time? And Carol, as you're looking at that chat box and seeing where people are from, I know you had a chance to look at the registration and you have some preview already.
Well, I knew already that we are with people from all four corners of the US, Alaska, Hawaii, New York City, Florida, also Seattle, Las Vegas. Wow, lots of people from New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand. Fiona, you killed it.
Of course, Eugene, Oregon. Yeah, lots of New Zealand. Great, welcome.
Welcome to you all. So COVID-19 and our social isolation and our social distancing has really created challenges that none of us have faced before. And Peter and I, as we've been experiencing it on our own, have been receiving questions from people all over the US and the globe. And we would just like to share 3 of those questions with you now so that we can give you a feel for the kinds of things that we will be looking at.
So the first one comes from John in Florida. And he says, I've been self-isolating with a roommate who is now breaking our bubble in ways that I'm very uncomfortable with. How do we have this conversation and not destroy the relationship?
We also got a question from Trish in New York City.
Ah, my hometown.
That was replicated many times for us. Trish says, my husband and I are really getting on each other's nerves about everything from homeschooling the kids to keeping the house cleaned. It's getting worse. What now?
And this third question is from Margaret in New Zealand. And she asks, how do I talk to a teammate who isn't delivering? We're all trying to be flexible and empathic, but this has created more work for me.
So in this webinar, we will be sharing evidence-based skills and tools to answer these questions, but also to answer yours. So let me say right now, please share any questions you have in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And then at the end, we will be answering those with Carol's help. So let's start with a question that came from Eileen Tang. And Eileen is living in Sydney, Australia, and she is the regional director of Entrepreneurs Organization in the entire Asia Pacific. And I do want to acknowledge that it was Eileen's question months ago that got us started on this webinar journey. So, in the words of Eileen.
So she put it very succinctly. She said, what recommendations do you have to avoid strangling my husband and kicking my kids back to school?
So we gave that some thought and said to each other, we should be able to answer that question in multiple ways.
So let's unpack this question by taking a look at a scene. And this is a scene with a couple who has now been self-isolating longer than they ever dreamed they could be. And it's almost like their house has become a cauldron for this bubbling seeds of discontent. So let's take a look. And when it's over, we're going to ask you, what went wrong? And so please, as you're watching the scene and you're seeing problems occur, feel free to use the chat box to talk about what you see as a situation going downhill.
And we want to know what you observe to be escalating the conflict. And by the way, Peter and I will be dramatizing this scene for you. So here it is.
Let's take a look.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah, what's up, Sue?
We need to talk.
About what?
About, I need more support from you.
What are you talking about? Sue, whenever you ask for help, I'm there.
Wait, did you hear what you said?
Support.
Whenever I ask for help, you're there. I shouldn't have to ask for help. This is like a joint team.
Wait a second, we're splitting hairs? Sue, I mean, look at the situation we're in. I mean, I am working night and day trying to
I
get
know.
that small business loan. I don't get it. You think we're in trouble now? We're gonna be in big trouble.
I completely get that. You know what I'm doing, though. I was just appointed to this executive team. I got to prove that I'm the go-to person. It doesn't matter if we're at home. I can make it happen. I'm in.
Sue, but what about boundaries? I mean, last night, twice. You took a call. I never take a call. I would never
But we're in
do
different
that.
situations. You own your business. I am trying to prove that I'm the go-to gal.
And
It's
so
different.
so we throw
Forget
everything
it.
up in the
Forget
air
it.
and there's no more rules?
Forget it. I knew this is exactly what was going to happen.
You knew what was going to happen.
I knew I was going to come in here, try to share my feelings with you. I knew you were going to get completely defensive.
Hey, I didn't get defensive. Okay? I mean, I stood here. I'm listening to this dribble you're putting out. I'm just disagreeing, that's all.
Fine. All I can say then is, thanks for listening.
So,
But by the way, I want to assure you that would never happen.
oh, never. So let's analyze this scene and let's try to figure out what went wrong. And I see many people have been putting their ideas in the chat box. And before we go to Dr. Schuerk, I do want to say what didn't go right. Because remember, we are setting a bar for today. We would like you to come out of this webinar being able to have these challenging conversations in a way that solves the problem, strengthens the relationship, and deepens trust. But I'm sure you'll know that didn't happen.
So Carol, what are some of the things that came in pinpointing problematic moments?
Well, within the first 2 seconds, Barbara Bell weighed in to say that Susan did not ask if it was an okay time to talk.
Oh, thank you, Robert. Spot on.
And then Jennifer Bell says, this happened in my house this morning.
Oh.
No empathy. Peter put the hand in the face, signaling, shut up right now before you even start.
Yeah.
Aggression, on Susan's part, accusatory. She put him right on the defensive. You. There's that hand up again. These people have experienced your models before. Susan did not express her feelings. Just telling him what he's not doing right for her, all about her. Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice analysis.
Thank you so much.
Nice analysis out there, and thanks, Carol. So, here's something to think about. It's not the intention of these people
That's right.
to really be obnoxious and to make the other one feel miserable.
And so if it's not the intention, then how did it all go wrong? And this is the first principle we'd like to share as a sort of umbrella piece. Intent doesn't equal impact, and that's important. And let us tell you why. My character had an intent. Peter did not hear it. Let me share with you what my intent was, and then Pete, why don't you say the impact that it had on you? Okay, so my intent was to say, Pete, I'm in a moment in my life where I can turn things around professionally, and you're not stepping up to let me do it. And if I fail, then I need your support, because if I don't have your support, I will be exhausted, depressed, and I will feel like a failure. I need you now more than I've ever needed you before.
Well, that was not the impact on my character. The impact on my character was, I don't care about your future. I don't care about your needs. It's me. And I want success in my job, and you can forget it. Our relationship means nothing. You mean nothing. You see,
Big difference between
intent and
intent.
impact miles apart. Now let's look at the character I was playing. Now, my character was my intention was to say, Sue, I'm really under stress too. And I'm scared that our whole family, I mean, we'll fall apart if I don't get this business loan, and if I'm not successful, we could lose my business. That's what I was trying to tell Susan.
And that wasn't the impact on me at all. The impact was, I am trying, I'm getting no credit for anything I've done because you are so bent on working on this business that you now have. You're so bent on being a valuable person to this executive team that you don't care about me and you don't care about anything that you. So it's not surprising that the scene went downhill fast. So versions of this scene, we know, have played out in households all over the world. And as we were preparing for this webinar, we interviewed Dr. Steve Nakasher, a psychotherapist in Chicago who has a staff of 18 other psychotherapists working with him. And we wanted to find out from Dr. Nakasher, what are they seeing as the most prevalent situations that people are bringing in?
Yep.
And our takeaway from our interview with Steve was this: many people are now feeling out of control. For some people, it's gotten to the point that they're having a tough time recovering. The one thing that Steve tells his clients they can control, and the one thing all of us can control, is making a decision to use this COVID-19 period of time to work on our relationships with our significant others, with our family, with our friends, and with our colleagues at work. And if we do that, we can come out of this chapter with something very positive. So
let's take a look now at 5 very counterintuitive communication moves that you could make to deal with this situation or any remotely like it.
So here's our first recommendation. Ask open-ended questions and then share your understanding. So let's talk a bit more about what open-ended questions are and what they aren't, and then how you can ask them and then reflect on what you've heard to prove to the other person you get it. So an open-ended question is a question like, can you tell me more? What is it you need most from me now? Is there anything else?
See, that kind of question really opens the conversation up. Many people, though, fall right into these thinly veiled opinion statements masquerading as questions, such as,
don't you think we've tried that? Haven't you? Shouldn't you? Weren't we? Those are not the kinds of questions that get the kind of dialogue going that we're talking about. So why don't we show our viewers what that might have looked like in the scene that we dramatized. So I might say to Peter, let me start it just like I did. Hey, Pete, we need to talk. I need more support from you. I am the one who's trying to prove myself at business. I'm trying to establish myself, but at the same time, I'm the main organizer around the house and I can't do everything.
So Susan, tell me what I can do right now to really help you. I mean, just talk to me more about this.
Can you see how differently this conversation would go by beginning in this way?
Now catch this. I mean, when she speaks, I've got to become a great listener for what she has to say. No matter how it might strike me to the quick, I've got to give myself over and really concentrate. Carol mentioned it earlier. We actually titled our most recent book, Be Quiet, Be Heard, The Paradox of Persuasion, because it is a paradox to know that by listening, we actually have more influence. You know, we waste more of our emotional and creative energy trying to persuade someone into something when they're not ready to hear it. People will not listen to us until they really believe that we hear them. So here's a way to challenge yourself. Try to tell their story as well as, or even better than they're telling you. It's that capacity to hear them at that level that allows that breakthrough to really occur and for people to feel whole.
So let's see how that might go here. So after Peter asked the open-ended question of me, I'm going to give an answer and then show them what it might look like to tell my story as well or better than I have.
Yep.
So what if I said something like, I just need you to take a more active role around the house. I'm so excited about the potential of my new position, but I'm scared that if I don't prove I can do it, it's all going to be over.
And you're really worried, afraid even, Sue, that unless I step up and start helping around the house and really doing things that normally you did in the past, that it could sink your future. It can make this new exciting position go down the tube.
And what else can I say but exactly? That's our first micro-communication behavior. Let's talk about our second recommendation. Share your own contribution to the problem.
We think of this one as one of the most powerful moves you can make in all of human communication. It's also one of the most counterintuitive. You know, Brene Brown speaks a lot about vulnerability. Vulnerability as a way to really connect. How much more vulnerable can you be than saying, hey, listen, I want you to know I am part of this problem too, and say what that is in a very explicit way.
And I'll say this right now, in these COVID-infused communication breakdowns, there's probably nothing as high impact as being able to say, hey, listen, I know I'm part of this problem too. So why don't we tell them how each of us could have done that in the scene that we did?
You want to start?
Sure. I could say, I know I'm part of the problem too, Peter, because I have become so focused on wanting to excel on this new executive team that I've stopped any boundaries. I do take calls all time at night and at dinner. And it seems like I have given no sense to you that I even know you have business issues as well.
So how do I push back on that? Not very easily, kind of pulls the bottom out of the resistance. Here's what I could say. And Sue, I own a big hunk of this problem too, because I do have more time than you right now. I mean, I have a more flexible life ahead of me during this whole period. And I haven't been helping around the house, and I could do a whole lot more.
So can you see how hard it is to stay angry at someone who's accepting their contribution?
So it's an extraordinary move, and this is an extraordinary time.
Yes.
These are the kinds of moves that we have to make.
Let's talk about our third recommended micro-communication behavior. Consciously share your feelings. Many of you have probably considered the impact of feelings on communication. In the communication research literature, it is really clear that self-disclosure is the greatest predictor of relationship. And self-disclosure is something I share with you that you couldn't have known if I hadn't. There's nothing more disclosive than when we share a vulnerable feeling. So imagine how different this interaction would have gone if I said, Peter, I have just been so worried and frightened about my place on this new team. And all I can think about is proving myself. And now I fear that it's taken a toll on our relationship. What a different start. The power of consciously sharing your feelings is vast.
Even that angry character I was playing earlier, how do I get hooked into something negative when Susan is being that open and that upfront and that vulnerable?
So let's look at our fourth recommendation. Pinpoint details, because vague inflames and specifics instructs. We'd like to go to a work example for this because so many of the questions people have been sending us really do focus on communication at work. So let's imagine, as was stated in one of the questions people sent in, that you have a team member and they're not doing their assignments on time, and you have sort of taken them up, and what's happening is it's putting more of a burden on you. Let us start by sharing the worst way to say this. Remember, vague and flames. Imagine if I say, you have been distracted and unresponsive and you're continuously late, and I'm the one who's been carrying you.
That would not go down well.
No, because vague inflames. So let me show you how I could do specifics instruct. Let's take that same situation. Imagine how different it is if I say, yesterday when you joined the Zoom conference call, you mentioned that you didn't have time to write the all-employee email. And I said I would take it on. And then I worked late into the night to finish it. Even though my teammate might not enjoy hearing that message, because it is specific, it instructs rather than inflames.
Now, here's an important piece of this, because Susan's been talking for a while that this were an ongoing scene. And remember the importance we talked about of listening.
That's right.
So at this juncture, she needs to give the other person a chance. So to ask that person, what was going on for you? So put your details out, put it out in great detail, but then invite the other person to get involved in the discussion by asking, so when this was happening, tell me what was going on for you, what you want to do, what you're really aiming for, and we've discovered this in our own work. They need to get 51% or more of the communication in this dialogue, 51% more of the airtime. When watch what happens. Listen to these benefits. If they speak a little more than you do, they feel better about the conversation, they feel better about you, and they feel more committed to whatever decision comes out of that. So it's a huge benefit to get them to say a little more than you do.
So number 4, pinpoint details, because vague inflames, specific instructs. Let's look at our 5th recommended microcommunication behavior.
So the 5th microcommunication is a do-over can be healing.
So let us tell you what a do-over is. A do-over is any time you have a communication breakdown. And let's face it, being self-isolated and living together in such close quarters, there are going to be communication breakdowns.
We're going to put our foot in our mouth with semi-regularity.
Here's what a do-over looks like. Hey, Pete, I didn't like the way I came off in our conversation yesterday. Could we take it from the top? Because I know I can do way better.
So what do you suppose Susan is saying under the words, just in the entree to this do-over conversation? She's saying, I care.
Yes.
I care so much. I care about you. I've been living with this in my mind and I want to make it right. Can you give me another shot? Can we take it again?
Now remember, when you do the do-over conversation, please use the micro-communication behaviors we shared with you today. So let us, again, remind you what they are. Number 1, ask open-ended questions and then share your understanding. 2, share your own contribution to the problem. 3, consciously share your feelings. 4, pinpoint details, because vague inflames and specifics instruct. And remember, if it doesn't work out for you, a do-over can be healing.
So,
thank you for submitting so many questions as we've been having a chance to talk with you. And now,
so let me say, as I eyeball the time here, I can see we're at the end of our 30 minutes. And let me assure you that those of you who have other commitments, by all means, go get it.
And thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely.
And for those of you who'd like to stick around a little longer, we'll take a few questions from Carol that she's been gleaning through this time.
So we'll run probably another 15 minutes, but don't worry if you have to leave. Everyone will get a recording of this, so you'll do get a chance to see those questions
So we hope
and our answers.
some of you will hang out and you can keep submitting. So,
Carol,
Dr. Carol, what's up?
lay them on us.
I'm going to start with a couple that came very early in the session, because that makes me think that these issues are very real and immediate. The first one is from a medical professional, I think that's important, who says, how can I convince my extended family to honor the stay-at-home rules?
So my understanding of this question is that this medical professional is probably an essential worker on the front lines and wants to go to professional work during the day and not have his family say, well, wait, you're leaving, why can't we leave? Wants them to honor the stay-at-home rules. That's my take on this. And I think we can use this question as a great example of how the 5 micro communication behaviors we shared with you are not a formula. They are, in fact, a template of options. So let me show you one possibility, and if you have any others, you can pop it in.
Sure.
I think in a situation like this, since you're talking to family, it would be useful to lead with feelings. Something like, I'm scared. I'm scared enough that I'm on the front lines. When I think about you moving out of social isolation, then it really frightens me more.
Because I love you guys and I don't want to lose you. And I know, I'm a medical professional, I know what can happen when you're out there. So please respect these important boundaries.
And here's one other of the micro behaviors I would use in that. I would say, take your accountability. I know I'm part of this problem too, because you see me going out every day to work, putting myself in harm's way. And you've got to be thinking, well, then why can't we do it as well? And I would also not forget the power of hearing what they say to you and being able to tell their story back to them as well or better than they shared it with you. Thanks for that.
Ready for more?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, this time I'm going to combine two, because what they both seem to get at is, though they both show a recognition of how frightening this is, and ask, how can I deal better with colleagues who are panicked and irrational about this? And then the other one, slightly differently, spoke to social media. But again, how do you communicate science and facts effectively when people are increasingly anxious and afraid about the impact of COVID-19 on their family and their livelihoods?
When I think about people being anxious and afraid, my head goes immediately to the research of John and Julie Gottman. They are the international experts on marital communication. And one of the things that they discovered in the research that is my big takeaway is, you can't do rational problem solving when people's hearts are racing. If you're trying to have this kind of conversation and tell someone, listen, you're being irrational, it's not true, you don't have to worry that much.
Doesn't work.
Just relax, don't get so bent out of shape. That just goes nowhere except getting the other person to push back and be more anxious. So the question is, how can you kind of self-soothe or have that conversation in a way where people's hearts aren't racing? So it depends on, again, the context. I don't know if some of them seem to be at work, Carol, and some of them might have been more personal at home. It seems like if you can find a way to have those conversations, while people are walking at safe social distancing, suddenly your heart rate isn't as high and you're able to think more clearly.
I think though, Sue, I mean, this is a good example of where the pushback is coming and our tendency is to try to persuade them not to feel that way. And when really, and here's that counterintuitive move, we need to really hear them out and say, please, can you tell me more? Tell me where that fear is coming from, and tell me why the research doesn't seem to be affecting you. And just listen with all your soul to hear them out, because then you're in a position, once they feel you get it, then you're in a position to influence them.
One more word about that. You can think about it this way. You'll never be able to talk someone into anything, but you can listen them into almost anything. And that would be our recommendation at this point.
So I think we have time.
Maybe one more or two more, depending.
I'm hoping to. I'm going to combine two together again, and this is a real straightforward raising issues question.
Okay.
From two places, talking about meetings on Zoom. Calling to establish protocols at the outset to agree to be present, paying attention, and increasingly, the longer time goes by, the more people are shutting off their video, maybe doing multitasking, something else, I don't know. Do you raise the issue?
Oh.
Well, let me say two things about, three. Number one.
No, she answers first every time. It's okay. Go ahead.
Number one, I think that it's important to recognize that tomorrow we're going to be talking all about team dynamics, but I'm not going to skirt the question today because this is about raising issues. The one thing we would say don't do ever is raise it with all of those faces on the screen at the same time. Because when you're raising an issue and there are other people around listening, you have suddenly ratcheted up the level of difficulty.
Yeah, it just goes soaring because no one wants to lose face in front of other people. So where on one-to-one, they might listen in a reasonable way, when there's other people around there, they don't want to look bad. And so suddenly you've got an argument, maybe even a fight on your hands, and worse, it's public. So one-on-one first.
Yes, and when we, last year we did a tour of India and the Asia Pacific, and it really gave us clarity on the power of face saving. And anything you can do to allow that to happen is going to help you move forward to what your main goals are. So that would be when you have a one-to-one with this person. You could even take accountability for part of the problem and say, hey, listen, I know there are moments in those meetings where things are so dragging and they're so long that of course you'd have other things that seem more important.
I mean, I myself have gone onto my phone when it's gotten slow. So, you can actually make that concession, and in so doing, again, it creates a more open environment for the other person to hear what we're trying to say.
And by the way, I do want to say one more thing. Tomorrow, we are going to show you how to create virtual meetings that are engaging, productive, and short. So hopefully, you'll be able to create meetings where this is not even happening.
Okay.
One more quick one. This better be a short one.
This is a quick one or not, but this one's from a fellow duck. This is Mark, U of O 2002, and I'm going to read it right off the
Oh,
screen.
ducks.
Okay.
As a couple that works and, all caps, lives together 24/7, how, all capitals, do you find alone time yourselves to reflect on the relationship and other processes when you're closely knitted in your living experience?
Oh, Mark.
Yes.
Go Ducks, Mark.
Yes. Hey, Mark, we lived 24/7 even before this all began.
That's our advantage, right? All these couples are saying, how do you live together 24/7?
Although we have had our moments.
Right, we certainly have. But we, I think, how do we get those moments of reflection? I think that's part of what Mark was saying.
Yeah, and I think we might do this in different ways. I know what I do is I'll go for a jog or a long hike, and during that I will really think carefully to myself. So, what's working in our relationship? What is it I can do better? Or if there's been a rough moment, to really think it through and focus on those 5 behaviors we talked about, and think about how I might use it in a very conscious way to improve our relationship. Did you want to add to that?
I think that's great.
Okay. Well, Well,
Thank you for those, Carol.
it really has been so much fun to be with you today. And I hope you'll join us tomorrow because when we focus on meetings, not only will you learn how to make them productive and short, but we'll also be providing you with some good information on how you can increase the cohesion,
That's right.
even when you're all virtual.
So we believe it is possible to use this COVID moment in time to create teams that are stronger, more cohesive, more engaged, and more productive than they were going into this.
Dr. Schuerk, Carol,
Thank
thank you for being part of this. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
And we would really like to thank two people who you will never get to see, Brianna and Monica, who are our Zoom tech gurus.
They're
who
working
make
like crazy.
everything you saw happen.
They're in the background pulling all the bells and whistles.
What happiness it was to be with you today, and we hope to see you all again tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you and be well.